Today we're going to talk about how easy it is to do a threat assessment with base operations. What better way to show that than to take a look at the upcoming World Series games starting tomorrow, the first one being at Dodger Stadium. We're going to look at Dodger Stadium and a nearby hotel. We're going to have a lot of people visiting in town, so it might be helpful to understand the risk profile of each one of these locations in depth. We're going to start off looking at a 1 mile radius around Dodger Stadium. We can see the highest occurring threat is theft from vehicle. We can see that things are pretty consistent throughout the day, with about 60% of the events happening in the evening, 41% of the events happening in the nighttime. When we take a look at trend analysis, what we'll see here is events for the better part of this year have largely been in line with the historical 5-year average. We can see, the last couple months are no different. So we're right on par with what's expected. At least at this point of the year. We could see earlier this year we were a little above the historical monthly average. Now we're end of October, getting into November here, so we can use our monthly averages to just understand what we could expect. We actually see that historically we see a little bit of dip in activity this 1 mile around the stadium starting in October and really going through November and December. Probably because Dodgers haven't been playing that much late October baseball in the last few years, but I digress. We could take this a step further if we wanted to and see trends based on time of day, day of week, or time of day. As you might expect, evening time frame is when we see the highest volume of events around this stadium. Now, when we go to threat breakdown, we can get more detail, not just on that most common event that's been occurring in this area, which is theft from vehicle, but all the subsequent events. We can see nonviolent theft, vandalism, trespassing, and burglary are all fairly common around this location, with simple assault being that 6th highest occurring threat. That might be the one that you care most about, alongside some of these other property crimes. This chart down here is going to help us visualize once again when these things are occurring most frequently. And let's just say, for example, we were most interested in violent crimes. We're going to be able to very quickly understand when are violent crimes most commonly happening in this area. We can see it's pretty spread out, with 32 over the past 12 months happening in the evening time frame and 28 happening in that night time frame, which is really after 8 p.m. but before 1 a.m. So a couple things to be aware of there. If we want to see where these things are actually occurring most frequently, we'll switch over to our heat map view, and we can see that outside of a few hot spots on corners right around the stadium, the majority of these things are actually occurring further into Chinatown, closer to downtown LA. So just a few things to be aware of. It doesn't look like there's too much unrest right around the stadium. That's going to be saved a little bit more for events that are happening here in downtown LA near our hotel. So let's flip over and analyze the Omni Los Angeles. What we're going to see here is, in terms of relative risk to the city of LA, Dodger Stadium sits in what looks to be a medium risk neighborhood. This downtown area, much more high risk. This is looking inward at LA. If we want to see how this compares to other locations around the country, we can see that Dodger Stadium has a base score of 66 in that 1 mile radius. It sits in this hexagon that has an 81. This Omni is a little bit higher, closer to an 88. It also sits in with this hexagon that has a base score of 92. So what's driving that base score? We can see the profile of events shift from predominantly property crime to a little bit higher volume of violent crime. Number one, we see some instances of trespassing here that are driving that up. But two, we see a significantly higher number of assaults over the past 12 months, 150 to be exact, with 75 aggravated assaults, 63 counts of robbery, and 50 burglaries. So again, let's focus on that violent crime, switch over to our heat map, and we can see there's just a much higher concentration of this activity. And when we go back to our threat breakdown, we can see again, most of these are happening in the evening and nighttime. So as you're walking to the game, as you're walking back from the game, it's really important to be aware that this is not totally uncommon. It happens a little more than every other day within this half-mile radius around this hotel. Now, we do have the election coming up in just over a week. Depending on how long this series goes, we might see overlap with that. And what we do know is that this is a pretty common place for folks to protest in LA. If any were likely to break out, this location is a high candidate to experience some of that traffic. We could see a fairly significant number of events over the past 12 months, 27 protests that were peaceful, 3 that required intervention. And we can get some more details here if you're interested in those. So that's how quick you can kind of drill down and understand what you need to know. Another interesting thing you might want to do is understand how has the World Series impacted the crime profile of stadiums in the past. So here's an example of switching back to Chase Field last year when the Diamondbacks played the Rangers. What we can see when we go to trend analysis, I've drawn us back to last October and November. I'm going to switch us over to a daily view at incident trends, and we can see that there was a spike in what looks to be predominantly property crime on the days of the games. We're not talking about a crazy high volume here, so I don't think there's too much of an impact, or I guess some people like to call a shock to the data here, but just good to be aware of that. It does appear that these games do draw this type of activity. So all that allows you to complete an assessment and quickly turn that into a report within base operations. So if you want to see more, if you want to see Yankee Stadium next or any other sites in the future, drop us a note. Let us know what you think. Look forward to feedback. Talk soon.